Greetings and welcome to our daily walk through the scripture for July the 25th. Your readings for today find you in 2 Chronicles chapter 17 and 18 with the death of Ahab, and then Romans chapter 9 verses 25 through 33 and Romans 10 1 through 13. Psalm chapter 20, 1 through 9, and Proverbs chapter 22 through 3. Now, funnily enough, the accounting in Chronicles and the conversation that Paul is having in Romans actually kind of talks about the same thing, and that is the sovereignty of God, that God does as he sees fit. And so God's sovereignty is always on display. In 2 Chronicles 17 and 18, we see the king of Israel, that would be Ahab, and he and Jehoshaphat have created a bit of an alliance. And during that alliance, they decide to go out and fight another group. And we see an accounting of a priest who goes in, and it's Micaiah, and he goes in and he says, "Hey, you're going to do this because you're going to do this." In other words, God has spoken already, and it doesn't really matter what I say, you're going to go do it, but there are going to be consequences, and here they are. Sure enough, those things happen. This is kind of the same thing that God's talking about in Romans as well, because God chooses whom he loves. Paul quotes it in Hosea, and he says, "I will call my people who are not my people, and I will call her my loved one who's not my loved one." Who's he talking about there? He's talking about Gentiles. God has chosen to offer his love to an entire world. He started with the people of Israel, but now he has expanded it. And so remember, we were kind of talking about what Israel's place is in different things. And he's continued to talk about the law, and he comes in and he talks about how in verse 30, this is the important part because this is where we're going to really hit today. "What shall we say then? That the Gentiles who did not pursue righteousness have obtained it, a righteousness that is by faith, but the people of Israel who pursued the law as the way of righteousness have not attained their goal?" In other words, who is it that's going to get righteousness? Those people that follow the law, or those people that put their faith in Christ? And Paul is saying, listen, it is going to be the people that follow Christ. It's going to be the people who place their trust in Christ. And that's what Romans 10 continues to expand and play on. He talks about Israel. Again, his heart is for the Israelites. "I can testify about them that they are zealous for God, but their zeal is not based on knowledge," which is really an ironic statement. I mean, because these are the people that are supposed to be holding on to the law of God, and yet, even when they have the law of God, they can't see what is directly in front of their face. They cannot see the Messiah that was promised is finally here and finally come. And so then Paul unpacks it a little bit more and comes up with one of the more famous verses in all of Scripture when it talks about Romans 10, 9, and 10. "If you declare with your mouth Jesus is the Lord and believe in your heart that God raised him from the dead, you will be saved. For it is with your heart that you believe and are justified, and it is with your mouth that you profess your faith and are saved." That is the answer to how Israel is going to get saved. At some point, Israel and the Israelites and the remnant, as Paul calls them, will recognize that Jesus is Lord. Israel is going to have an opportunity, and it kind of talks about it in other parts of Scripture, that the Israelites are going to come to a place where they recognize exactly who God is, and Paul is looking forward to this day. But until then, he's going to continue to live for Christ, and he wants to tell others how you can do that, and it is, if you declare with your mouth Jesus is Lord. Now, why is this important? Well, it's one thing to say that you believe, but if you don't actually live what you believe, then do you believe it? That's what Paul says here. That's what we see in the book of James. I mean, James is a book that assumes that a person is a believer as they read his book, but he's also saying you've got to live out this faith. You have to make sure that you are carrying it out, that you are professing with your lips, that you are with your mouth, that you profess your faith and are saved. See, the thing about it is back then is that it wasn't belief until you actually lived it. And that's something that our world today really struggles with. We are double-minded in many ways, where we will try to say that we're Christians in our heart, but as soon as the pressures of the external world come about and say, well, how can you believe this or how can you believe that, we'll back down. We capitulate. We say, you're right. We have forgotten that God is sovereign. We have forgotten that God is bigger than any situation, that God is bigger than any difficulty. And in fact, God sometimes places us in these difficulties so that we may proclaim with our lips that Jesus is Lord. So our word for today is simply get rid of the double-mindedness. If you say you believe in Jesus, then live like you believe in Jesus. For then everyone who calls on the name of the Lord will be saved. All right, that's it for today. We'll talk more next time.